Joining us now are Barb McQuade, former U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan and professor at the University of Michigan School of Law, and the great Neal Katyal, who actually needs no introduction. So let us go right to you both. And I will start with you first, Neal. In terms of how you're reading this reporting, the Times is pretty aggressive, saying very clearly they believe that an indictment could be is on its way. The Washington Post is a little bit more circumspect. NBC has not confirmed that an indictment is on its way, but indeed Trump has been offered the chance to testify in front of this grand jury. How do you read the situation?
Right. So there are two possibilities, Alex. The Post says, well, it signifies the end of the investigation. The New York Times says it signifies an indictment is likely. I think both are possible. I think we're reading tea leaves here at best, but I think it means indictment is more likely. And I think that for two reasons. One is that the evidence against Donald Trump, actually counts for something. And it's really bad, what he did with Stormy Daniels and the like. And the Manhattan District Attorney here has paused the investigation before. In fact, it looked like it was shut down. And then something restarted it. The restart to me is telling, because you're not going to do that, particularly, reopen an investigation into the former president of the United States, unless you're really pretty sure you have the goods. So the fact that it's restarted to me makes it more likely that it's leaning toward indictment. The argument on the other side is this. There's a section in the New York Code 190.50, and that says that a defense attorney can tell the district attorney, hey, I want to assert my client's right to possibly testify before the grand jury. So please give me notice so I can give that option to her, him, my client. It could be that that's what's happened here, that the Trump, defense team has told the district attorney that. And now the district attorney is just saying, OK, I'm near the end of my grand jury investigation. If you want to come in, you can come in. It's certainly possible. I think that's what's driving the Post story, though they don't go into all the detail about the code and stuff. But I think it's less likely.
Barb, how do you read this? I mean, we do know that Michael Cohen, he has not testified before that grand jury as yet, but he has had 19 meetings in the Manhattan DA's office. Kellyanne Conway, Hope Hicks, all brought in. We're not sure which one of those characters has just had meetings or actually testified. But given the level of witnesses that are being called, if you will, I would ask you to read the same tea leaves that Neal is.
Yeah, I think that it suggests to me that they are at the end of the investigation. New York law requires that the prosecutors at least invite the target in to testify. But you're not going to invite that person in until you are at the very end, because before you interview someone who's the target of an investigation, you want to be as informed as you can be about that investigation. So you would talk to everybody else first. So this means he's the last witness, and they've reached that point. That means they've talked to everybody that they plan to talk to. I would also expect that if the decision were not to charge Donald Trump, there would be no need to invite him in. It's a big deal to invite a target into the grand jury, especially when it's the former president. You would not go to that trouble if all you're going to do is decline to bring charges. So although it is speculation, it seems to me that if this reporting is true, that Donald Trump has been invited in to testify, then that speculation seems pretty sound that it means an indictment is not far off.
Neal, I think, given the number of investigations of fairly great magnitude in terms of a special counsel looking into whether Trump incited a riotous mob to undermine democracy on January 6th. I think to a lot of people who've watched the Trump's legal foibles unfold, the Stormy Daniels hush money payments seem like a throwback. And it's surprising that A, Alvin Bragg is still pursuing this, and that B, if we're going to, look at this in the long lens of history, that the first, person to charge a former president with to levy a criminal indictment against a former president would be Alvin Bragg for this case. Do you think that there is any discussion with the feds about whether or not he moves forward with an indictment, given the expectations that other criminal charges are in the wings?
I don't think so. I think that you have here, Alex, you have two different federal investigations of Trump, one about what he did on January 6th, the other about the documents that he stole and put at Mar-a-Lago. And then you have two state investigations, one in Georgia about the fake electors and finding 11,780 votes and the like, and the other, this New York investigation we're talking about. The New York investigation does have a bit of a federal overlay because, as you were reporting a moment ago, the federal Justice Department was looking into some of these things. So I could imagine a conversation between the state and the federal government about that specific piece. But I don't think that there's a bigger conversation about Bragg, the district attorney, saying, hey, what are you going to do about January 6th, the stolen documents, or even a conversation with the Georgia and New York, folks, because they're very separate investigations. And so I really do think it's like a race at this point to see, is it going to be Fani Willis in Georgia or Alvin Bragg in New York that's going to be the first to indict Donald Trump? I mean, regardless of who's the first, it looks like that person very well may not be the last person to indict Donald Trump.
Yeah, Barb, so we're looking at a future that could possibly be one where you have the Manhattan DA going forward with criminal charges. You have Fani Willis, the Fulton County DA, going forward with criminal charges. Maybe you have a special counsel going forward with criminal charges on the Mar-a-Lago documents case, and then potentially more criminal charges relating to January 6th. I mean, that is possible, it sounds like, at this point.
Yeah, it really could be quite chaotic. In addition, you'll have potentially Donald Trump defending himself in 4 separate criminal cases simultaneously while also running for president. Could be really incredibly interesting. And I think there's a good chance the 2 federal cases are charged as separate cases, maybe one out of Florida and one out of D.C. So he could be defending himself in 4 different venues while that's going on. Certainly unprecedented, yes, but so has been the conduct of the former president. So I think 2024 promises to be quite a year.
That's an understatement, if there was one. Barb McQuade and Neil Katyal, thank you both so much, my friends, for joining me this evening.